Wow. Birds. So many birds. I could hear doves like cooing outside of my window. When I woke up this morning, they sound. It sounds like. I think it was over there. But they sound like a woman, like, moaning. Having, like, a really nice time. Hello, beautiful people whom I love or whom I don't love. It's hard to say at this point. I am doing this voiceover recording a little bit tipsy off of cheap beer because, well, there's actually no particular reason for that. It just happens to be what I was doing when I was editing this video, and I frankly think it is not a terrible vibe to be doing this voiceover in, because 2024 was weird, and I am recording this voiceover in 2025 where, I don't know, we won't get into that yet. But basically 2024, I spent most of that year, about 9 months, in my Grammy's spare bedroom. That is this bedroom right here. Those are my stuffed animals. That is my teacup. Did you know that it rains, like pouring rains in Texas? Actually, I did know that because it like thunderstorms there, and like it doesn't really thunderstorm in Portland where I grew up. And it's kind of crazy, actually, that Texas has thunderstorms. Like, it's like normal, but like when you sort of conceptualize of it, you're like, huh? Like you have like more intense rain than even like Oregon. But literally, Texas gets thunderstorms. Like Texas even gets like a legitimate winter, because this is January when I got there. And I didn't realize that it, like, they had real winters. I mean, obviously I'm like outside, like, you know, brewing tea. But it was weird. Like there were some times where it was actually like 35, 45 degrees. And I just didn't know that was like a thing. But basically I went to Texas because I needed to sort of very intensely extract myself from the life that I had been living for 5.5 years with my ex-boyfriend in an apartment in Portland, which was deeply stabilizing and important. But then I had a spiritual awakening, and about 1.5 years into that spiritual awakening, I realized that I just needed to do something extremely different because I was being suffocated, and I needed to make efforts to creating a kind of like magical life that I now understood was possible after my spiritual awakening. And so I was doing a lot of things like that, like while still living in this apartment, but I started to realize that there was something to, you know, creating and cultivating freedom around yourself. And it's an energy of freedom around yourself. So any way that I could cultivate that vibe, I was interested in cultivating, because I knew it was something I was going to be able to take with me after I left these environments. And So, my Grammy has a 3-bedroom apartment in the suburbs of Texas. Not apartment, but a house that she's lived in for many years, 30 years. My mom grew up there. I spent a lot of my childhood there, and she's always desperate for me to interact with her and visit her. And it seemed like for the first time I had a win-win scenario where I was like, actually, I do have a reason for hanging out with you and talking to you for a long period of time, and it has to do with trauma healing and, some kind of forged art residency vibe and not having to pay rent for a long period of time, and et cetera, et cetera. And so that's what I did. And it gave me a lot of freedom and peace, and it allowed me to be in the void space, in my emotions, in pure energy. So I am simultaneously working through family traumas and things with my Grammy just by simply being in proximity with her. And I am also enjoying, the open space that being in an environment that I'm not really beholden to, I don't need to pay for, I feel more or less entitled to, is actually healing to me. It means that I can be chaotic. It means I can be complicated. It means I can be heavy in this environment in a way that I don't necessarily feel like is appropriate in every environment, but I know is very crucial to whatever is coming next. So I take this time and I find these moments that still feel like me in the midst of this time, in the midst of being in the suburbs of Texas, which is a place that I deeply don't really resonate with, aside from, the couple years that I spent as a very young person there. And otherwise, it doesn't feel like a place I was necessarily destined to be. And I found a way to make it serve my embodiment. And I basically spent January to the end of August like this, just like kind of sitting on a porch swing and staring at the sun and allowing everything that came up within me to come up. Because for the first time in a very long time, I didn't really have to pay for anything. I had very minimal expenses, and I could just kind of sit here and drink tea and write in my journal and examine pieces of my past, pieces of my childhood, and kind of show up in a new way. A way that I felt like was going to serve me going forward and was also going to heal my ancestry and my family, because I was going to be probably the first person to really show up in this way. And I just, it felt important on so many levels to be able to free all of us from this shit. I think that everyone in my family has certain superpowers and stuff, but I definitely do feel special. I feel that chosen one energy. And I've always felt kind of looked at and gawked at in a way that people were not able to, they didn't really know what they were doing. I don't know. I just felt like people looked at me as if I had some kind of special power, but they couldn't grant me the space of that power, if that makes sense. So I kind of do feel like a chosen one. You feel like a really powerful specimen, and you're like, why? Okay, I'm so powerful, but why are you treating me like this? It's weird. But that's also why, but it feels weird. So I don't know. This was important. This was a very important time. It was an art residency and a monastery experience. And I became a nun, and I had, I ate just boiled potatoes and rice and sauerkraut. And it was super minimalist. It was super simple. It was super basic. I literally could not physically really leave the environment of like kind of being out in the middle of nowhere of Texas for like a long period of time. Like if I wanted to leave, I would have to get someone to, take me out for coffee or something, and they would have to come pick me up from this very inconvenient place in the middle of the suburbs. So it was very much like an important thing for me of kind of being comfortable with like not having anything and being comfortable with being kind of isolated and stranded and kind of like, like how would you be if you were like in jail? How would you be if something really, like, I kind of did want like a very intense spiritual initiation like this. And obviously, like, there are times where I'm going on walks and stuff, but that's it. Like, how much can you really entertain yourself when you're, literally in the suburbs of Texas? Like, it's just sort of, you're just kind of in this weird liminal space. So it was kind of like a test for me, like, I didn't want to identify with a lot of things outside of myself. I wanted to like really get comfortable with sort of the energy within. And it felt like being around family, which is a very triggering experience, is kind of a perfect like way to round that out. So it's like I went and became a nun in an environment with my family. And yeah, I don't know. I just kind of instinctually knew that I was going to be like a much stronger person after all of that, emotionally and spiritually, because I was determined to rise above my family and rise above my experiences with them. And I was determined to use my circumstances to my advantage. So, just the fact that like my family doesn't have everything, they don't really have like a bunch of things they can give me and provide for me, but things like my Grammy's spare bedroom where I can just kind of go and be and stare at the wall and stare at the ceiling and stare at the sky and stare at the sunset at dusk and be in my room and just sort of stare out the window. Like, honestly, that is a luxury, to be able to just lay and stare at the sun rays coming through the trees and hitting your window pane, and not having to facilitate that situation, like not having to pay the mortgage, not having to, like I would buy myself delivery and stuff, but like this was a massive luxury to me, to be able to just sit still. This was an exercise in sitting still because it was genuinely something I had never done. It was genuinely something I had never done. I spent the first year of my awakening just like going insane, like just going batshit, like just buying myself a bunch of shit, like just really indulging. And like the other side of awakening is like the freedom to be still, the freedom to sit, the freedom to lay, the freedom to be indulgent, the freedom to feel like a Victorian woman who has the time to feel the extent of all of her emotions and the range of all of her longing and the complexity of her despair and her exhaustion. To be able to like really be with your emotions and like feel them one by one as they arise is a goddamn luxury. And it was one that I had never had, and it really shouldn't be a luxury. And I think that's why this time with myself and for myself was so crucially important, and why I knew it was pivotal to not only the awakening that I was entering into, but the awakening that I was on the cusp of like bringing to humanity. Because I was like, if I can tap into this embodiment, I can bring this to people. And it really, it shouldn't be something that we feel like we don't have access to, and yet we do. It's extremely rare to feel like, oh, I can just like lay around and like my whole life isn't going to fall apart. So that was a major part of why I came to my Grammys. I would say that was probably the primary reason, was that I was just exhausted by Rent. I just kind of needed to just sort of be lazy for a while, and it came with an added benefit of, family trauma and all this other stuff. And, we made an art studio in her house, and we mostly fought. Like, I didn't make a lot of art. She didn't make a lot of art. I did some things. I did progress, but it was just the intentional effort of us sort of coming together, and me just sort of intentionally trying to create this environment for myself that was specifically something that I wanted to bring with me. So it was really important, and it was a way that I found with my current circumstances and what was available to me to get what I needed. And I recommend that of anyone, because even if you're not privileged, even if you're less privileged than me, and even if you're far more privileged than me, you can get what you need from the things that you have. Just find a way to use things and people in a way that, is sincerely beneficial to where you're going, and is deserved in the situations that you're in, is warranted. Just take what you fucking need. Don't be such a martyr. Don't be such a saint. Just get what you need from life and go. Go. And when you're done, when you feel like, okay, thank you very much, then have the courage and faith to pivot and move on, Stay as long as you need to stay. I stayed in Texas much longer than anticipated. I was there for 9 months, and I didn't really expect to be there for more than 2. But once I knew it was time to pivot, I did that, and I came, to I pivoted right into the college that I almost went to at 18 years old, and I didn't go to. And so everything kind of had this full circle effect where I don't know, everything just kind of ended up where I felt like it was kind of wild how everything ended up. It's crazy that I ended up back at the school that I almost went to but didn't, because of life and stuff. And now I'm 30, and the order of things makes so much sense, and I didn't really anticipate it or expect it, but I did kind of put it out there and was like, if that happens, that would be cool if it was aligned. And it was kind of a last minute decision. I didn't accept the acceptance to the school until last minute, but it was been an amazing decision that I've made for myself. It's important. And yeah, she got to become who I think she would have become if she had the support that she deserved, and didn't have to be so rebellious and stuff. And then something kind of very unexpected happened at the end of the year, where I actually fell in love with someone. And I don't really know what else to say about that right now, but I still love him, and I'm very grateful for him, and I'm grateful that he exists, and I'm very grateful that I got to hang out on his porch and smoke cigarettes and be in his world, and I'm grateful that I know him, and I'm grateful that I'll always love him. And I'm grateful for who he's turned me into, and who he's reminded me that I am, and who he's allowed me to be. I'm grateful for the epiphanies and the heartbreaks, and I'm just grateful for all of it. I really am. And sometimes you meet people and you experience things that are so magical that it's weird because you're kind of confused about why you even deserve something like this. You're like, wait, aren't you like something out of a dream? Like you're fantastic. But then your illusions will sometimes and often still get shattered because it won't be exactly what you think it is, and it won't become exactly what you think it should. And sometimes you love people, and sometimes things are transformative, and sometimes that's like kind of all they are. And I still don't know what everything is supposed to be, but I know that I love people, and I know who I love, and I know that my love is real, and I'm grateful for that. And yeah, I do feel like God has curated this life for me, and I trust that that will continue to be true. So this is true. What's on the screen right now, I say thank you. And